Listen, I know the news of the day is important, but, you know, we got a big event tomorrow night, this Patriots opening night, and it's pretty dramatic. And one of the best sports minds in the region, Bill Koch from the Providence Journal, is here to talk about that and a whole bunch more. Good evening. Welcome to My State of Mind, now 7:30, 11:30 on Meyer ITV and Fox Providence at midnight. Do not complain about a couple of 90-degree days, for heaven's sake. You know, this winter is coming, and the almanac says it's worse than that. Well, it can't be worse than last year. What's the almanac, though? Anyway, let me hustle because I got a lot to talk about with Bill. A lot to talk about with Bill. Kevin's. Oh, by the way, Kevin, this is the first time a director ever gave me anything. Kevin was at the Deutsche Bank. He doesn't play, but he likes to follow golf. And I got the whole big program that I can go home and read. It's very exciting. Thank you, Kevin. Kind of a beautiful moment. But this isn't. 38, uh-oh. Yeah, that's what I wrote, because when I heard this, I thought, uh-oh. It was only last night that I was talking to Ted Nisi about all these documents that are going to tell us everything about 38 Studios. The headline on this one is, oh, wait a second, not so fast. Tim White explains.
Late Tuesday, Superior Court Judge Michael Silverstein issued an order in the 38 Studios case, asking anyone who wants to keep materials sealed in the case to put in a request with the court Monday. The judge will then hold a hearing the next day before deciding what materials he will keep withheld. Late last month, Silverstein ordered all 38 Studios material filed in the case to be released to the public. A Providence court clerk told Target 12 on Tuesday those documents would likely be unsealed next week, but that was before the judge's order. A court official now says they could release a substantial amount of material in the 38 Studios case next week, except for items that have been asked to be sealed. Those items will remain under wraps until the judge makes a decision, according to the order. A court clerk tells Target 12 they are waiting for attorneys in the case to send them over depositions from key players in the case. If that is delayed because of the order, it may push the release timeline back.
Yeah, and it could end up being a whole to-do about nothing, because the juicy stuff, the stuff that tells the story on motive and all that, may not appear, may be sealed. It only buoys our continued call for the House Speaker to have hearings and for the governor to make good on her promise during the campaign that she would call for them. Stay tuned. Yeah, I don't know, man. And neither do the feds at this point. The Providence Journal headline, this is a must-read. You must read Kathy Gregg's front page story in the Providence Journal. See, I'm always selling newspapers. Slow? What, are you kidding me? So back in May, Governor Raimondo has this under the 610 connector press conference, you remember, and she's talking about all the truck tolls that she wanted to put in. Of course, she didn't have her number together along with her own DOT plan. It was just a mess. But here's the thing. If you read Kathy's story, you'll see that the Federal Highway Administrator also doesn't know what Rhode Island means by the number of bridges they want to toll. He probably is driving through thinking, or maybe he lives here, I'm not sure, but he's probably thinking, okay, 20 bridges? Where are they? Well, 20 bridges don't exist in this state, unless you think that Middle Spring Avenue, the overpass of 146, is a bridge. This tolling thing is not yet done, and I just can't believe the state Senate passed legislation for tolls without specification on what's a bridge or what the toll was going to be. Thankfully, the House is holding on, and that deal is far from done so far. Firefighter protest. The Providence firefighters are trying to make headway with the mayor. The mayor is trying to make headway with them. I can't figure out which. The headline on this one says it all, I think, and Eyewitness News kind of cut into a little bit of the meat of the story as the firefighters were at City Hall just kind of yelling about the idea that they've been forced to work another 14 hours a week with very little additional pay.
Mayor Jorge Alorza says the issue comes down to firefighter overtime.
We have one firefighter who makes over $100,000 a year just on overtime.
A month ago, the mayor cut the fire department platoon structure, boosting firefighters' average work week to 56 hours.
56 hours, it's not 56 hours, it's 60 hours, it's 70 hours, it's 80 hours.
We went from 4 days time off to 2 days time off, and that's a significant decrease.
The City of Providence spends about $9 million a year, again, just on overtime. That's a problem that has to be addressed.
City Council hasn't made a decision on the issue. They met behind closed doors on Tuesday.
You know, I understand saving money, and I applaud the mayor for having that instinct. But you know what? You got to do your homework, and there's no proof that his plan actually saves that money. that he's talking about. You always pick on the one guy, right? The $100,000 overtime firefighter. The truth of the matter is that the law requires Jorge Elorza to negotiate the terms of this move from 4 platoons to 3, from 42 hours to 56 hours, and he hasn't done that. So all the savings that he is promising are phantom at this point. And actually, when it comes right down to it, I've never been a union apologist. I think people who followed anything I've had to say on radio and television here for a long time know that, but you know, when you're asking guys to increase their workload by 33% and all you've done is skosh 8% out, that's not honest. So this is the new term. I was using it on the radio yesterday, and all of a sudden it appeared in a headline. Well, it makes complete sense, right? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say PawSox or WarSox. Now that Warwick is interested, and the mayor, who will be here tomorrow to talk about this and more, had a brainstorm.
While their pitch for a stadium in Providence continues to face major hurdles, Warwick Mayor Scott Avedisian is hoping the PawSox owners turn their attention to the second largest city in the state. Avedisian argues that Warwick already has the foundation for a stadium the owners were looking for, and he's hoping the city can capitalize on its airport, train station, and RIPTA hub.
And having all of that there is a perfect fit for a stadium. You can get people there who can fly in, who can take the train from Boston, who can take the bus.
Not to mention hotels, restaurants, and convention space. He says the locations he's proposing are off Jefferson Boulevard and Post Road.
You know, from scratch, it's not such a bad idea. But can we follow this? This was McCoy that wasn't up to standard, and a need to go to an urban ballpark setting. Thus, the mandate self-imposed by the new ownership of the PawSox. Why would you go to Warwick? I understand. Well, I'll listen to Scott. You know, listen, he's doing his job. He's advocating for his city. Why would they go to Warwick? Why not renovate McCoy in Pawtucket? Everyone's lost track of the conversation. It's like, what's going on here? I wonder if my guest Bill Koch has anything to say about that when we return. But first, I just wanted to mention that these two are cool. They really are. Did you watch any of the U.S. Open quarterfinal last night? I actually kind of felt that Serena let Venus back in the second set. There's Serena, and then there's Venus. There's Venus. She's pretty tough herself, 23rd seeded or in the world or something like that, but Serena is just an absolute machine. Oh, ouch! My groin hurts just watching that. It was exciting, and you know what? It's a heck of a family. Look at them. You know how much they love each other. They say they do, and I believe it. Playing your sister that many times has got to be a drain. What are you doing? I go over here? Well, don't I ask for something else first? What are you changing the rules? You give me a guide and then you change the rules of the show? Your opinion matters to us. That's what I say. I'm just staying on this camera. I refuse to cooperate. 228-1886. State of mind at MyRITV.com. Kevin, jumping the gun. Just let us know what you think about any of the things we just said, including Dino, who says, I believe it was you who said to Tom, settle and take the punishment. Well, I'm glad he didn't listen to the media and me. Well, I had no idea the NFL would be so stupid. We'll talk to Bill Koch about that and more when we come back. What camera do you want now, Kev? This? Be right back. All right, so I was going to, you know what? I feel like I want to start with the PawSox because Mr. Koch just gave me an earful on that, but you'll have to stay tuned for the business and politics of the PawSox or the WarSox, whatever socks you're wearing, your dirty socks, coming up in a little bit. We're going to talk about this, though, this thing called the Patriots and this guy Tom Brady and the courts and everything else. So, Bill, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Your brilliant sports mind is needed on about 4 or 5 different items here. But first, Deflategate is, for the most part, over.
Allegedly.
Feels like it's over.
It does.
Even if the NFL has any kind of appellate success, reinstituting a suspension on Brady would be a huge public relations mistake, don't you think?
And as you know, these things can be tied up in court in perpetuity. They could be in court until Tom's ready to retire, for all we know. I don't see them having any sort of success here. Once you make an initial ruling, it's very hard to get it overturned.
Well, it's a 10% appellate overturn rate, period.
Which is 90% the other way.
Yeah.
I think we've seen the end of this. I think it's done.
The system of the collective bargaining agreement, I think, is probably what's really on trial here, and was a whole lot less about the pounds per square inch inside of football. What happens next? Does the commissioner's role in terms of reviewing discipline get changed, altered? Do they have them step away rather than enforce?
There are owners' meetings this month where I'm sure that all of this is going to be discussed ad nauseum. In order to make any serious changes, though, like you said, you need to reopen the collective bargaining agreement, and that has to be done with the players' union. If you're the owners, you need to balance the following. You have huge financial leverage in your favor. The publicly held opinion is that you robbed the players the last time. The CBA doesn't expire for another couple of years. Do you want to reopen the CBA and allow the players a side door to try and recoup some of that financial leverage?
No.
These guys are billionaires for a reason.
You think the commissioner should have showed up tomorrow night? He says he's not going to.
No, because the commissioner always preaches, I'm going to protect the shield. And what more of a distraction could there be than him showing up at a marquee event like the opening game of the year?
It's not as if it's the oath of office. In other words, it's not so historically and culturally, ceremonially in stone that the commissioner has to show up on opening night, correct?
He hasn't shown up in New Orleans since Bountygate was adjudicated. That's a period of years, not months.
I didn't realize that. Okay. He would have the tar boo. Kev, you'd boo him tomorrow night, right?
Absolutely.
Kev's a season ticket holder.
Sure.
He'd be booing him. All right. What about the team itself? Mr. Brady is a self-starter. He didn't need this motivation to get him going. What do you think?
The last time we had something like this, Spygate, 50 touchdowns later, 18 wins in a row later, they were in the Super Bowl playing the Giants. You win one more game and you have the greatest season in NFL history by a quarterback, team, organization, however you want to slice it. I certainly think he's going to be motivated to try to go back-to-back.
Not that he wouldn't have been anyway.
More so than ever.
So what does he do in the more so than ever context? And what you study athletes all the time. The difference between performance X and X plus is what?
It's the time that you don't see them, whether it's an extra film session on the player's mandatory off day on Tuesday, whether it's an extra 20 minutes after every practice with receivers who are relatively inexperienced outside of Julian Edelman and Brandon LaFell, who's going to start the year unavailable. Those little things add up to the point where when you're in the playoffs, it's just reflex. It's not thought. And it's not necessarily just Brady's performance. It's the way he can influence the performances of others.
Right. You're bullish on them this year.
I think so.
What about my Giants?
I like your Giants. I like Eli Manning in a contract year, and I like some of the offensive weapons he has.
I don't like our defense.
They're not going to stop anybody, but they're going
to
be a lot of fun to watch.
It'll be very un-Giant-like football.
It'll be a lot of fun to watch. Tom Coughlin will hate every second of it.
But not if he makes the playoffs and saves what is a career. I don't know why he's trying to save it. But
you pay Eli?
Huh?
Do you pay Eli?
Jury's out for me. I for the first time in years, I didn't even draft him.
Wow.
Although I did take Odell Beckham. I traded my third and first picks just for the first pick in the draft.
I have Odell on one of my teams in another draft tonight, and he is a prime target.
When we come back, local sports, local, the politics of the PawSox, the college football season, and Bill's passion and mine, basketball. Stay with us. I'm going to pop back and forth here a little bit. I really do want to hear what Bill has to say about the PawSox. If I leave it till later and we don't get to it, your take on the PawSox situation, the business of the Pawtucket Red Sox, is what?
As someone who grew up here, it's sad to watch what's going on here. But it is a changing of the guard, whether you like it or not. There's no more Ben Mondor. Lou Schweckheimer is moving on. Mike Tamburo could be next. Attendance is down 16% since 2013.
You have a theory on that?
I think that fans are trying to send a message to the ownership that they're not happy. And I think what's going on
by not going to the games.
By not going to the games. And I think what's going on is the opposite effect. The owners are looking at it and saying, see, look, it doesn't work here anymore, so we need to go somewhere else. It's counterproductive what's going on.
Yeah, man, I don't know who to say, hey, come on, man, too, in this one, because the PawSox ownership has misplayed this thing from the get-go. You know, having a Dear John moment with the Pawtucket mayor, literally when the ink was still wet on the contract for the purchase and sale, I thought was a terrible mistake. They could have played the year out. They could have enjoyed and celebrated their ownership, made a mark and made some points about attendance, and then said, listen, here's what we're thinking. Instead, they came in and bang, boom, boom, and you're out and we're leaving and you better do this and 120 mil from the state. And
when that first proposal gets out, that's a public relations nightmare.
Yes.
And for those who know Larry Lucchino in the industry, Larry has never been the white hat type of guy. Larry is the black hat type of guy. Not necessarily very popular with fans, with other owners. But he is a strict business guy who has always made money for his bosses. And in that, he's going to continue to be employed. If you had the Dr. Charles Steinberg listening tour before any proposal became public,
and maybe listened,
you might have been able to curry some public favor. But now that that cat's out of the bag, you need to start from scratch somehow. I'm not sure necessarily, and you alluded to this earlier, I'm not sure necessarily if they know where that is and where to start.
No, I think there's Jim Skeffington, God rest his soul, was the lightning rod in all of this, and of course his sudden passing really threw a monkey wrench, I think, probably into the organization and into the politics of the whole thing. Skeffington thought he had this thing wired in the General Assembly. He may very well have had it wired there, but it's not wired there now. The other New England cities that may have an interest are playing, rope-a-dope with this thing, but my guess is, all due respect to Mayor Abedisian, who's coming in tomorrow, Warwick, Johnston, Cranston, whoever's bidding for the PawSox misses the point. These guys want an urban city center environment or bust.
The other thing I would say to the fans is they were 8th out of 14 this year in the International League in attendance. Is 8th out of 14 good? Shouldn't you demand something better? If you're running a business and your customer base is off 16% in 2 years, and if you're in the bottom half of your respective field, aren't you going to try to change something to be more successful? The status quo, and just because we've always done it this way, that seems to be very prevalent in Rhode Island, and it's a loser mentality. And I'm sure the owners who come in from the outside are looking at it and saying, we deserve better than this. You people should think that you deserve better than this. And we're going to try to find a way to make it better, whether you like it or not.
It's really interesting. Those arguments have never really surfaced much lately. And I think they deserve some air. But 38 Studios has poisoned the psychology of Rhode Island right now. And any public-private partnership is guaranteed to be mistrusted. And so that's the problem.
Whenever you have one-party leadership, whether it be Democrats or Republicans, you only have one set of ideas. That's what we have in this state. That's what we've had for a long time. You have mistrust in the General Assembly, and rightly so after 38 Studios. The other thing that takes me aback about the General Assembly is when Speaker Mattiello, just before he was elected the Speaker, when he comes out 3 or 4 days before that actual election on the House floor and says, I have the votes, I'm going to be the next Speaker. How can you have any faith in any sort of transparent process there?
Oh, you think he's just a sports writer? I love this. Back to sports for just a second. Oh, by the way, you were saying you're getting you get feedback as a sports writer on the PawSox deal. Very polarized, right? There's no middle ground. Let's think about this thing rationally, a la how you've discussed it. It's this side or this side, which is what America is becoming. This side or this side on every issue.
That's correct. And it seems to be that at this point, most of what I hear is people want them to stay at McCoy. They're distrusting of the General Assembly. They don't have any faith that any sort of deal will work out. And anyone who says, let's examine the alternatives is shouted down. It's not the popular opinion. And if you don't have that sort of meaningful dialogue back and forth, you're not going to accomplish anything.
What's college football season look like?
URI's got a big one next weekend against Harvard. I'm looking forward to Bryant and Brown squaring off. Bryant could be a legitimate state champion this year. They play URI and Brown.
Does it matter to them? The football programs, it does matter. The state championship does matter.
Bryant has made a huge investment in their football program, and they're picked first in the Northeast Conference this year. And I think Brown, there's a great deal of pride there. There's a great deal of tradition there. Phil Estes has done a great job.
Right.
You know, and URI the same. I mean, you know, there are a lot more calls for URI to drop the program because they haven't been successful recently. But if you talk about anyone in the 80s and how great it was then, the Tom Earhart days, they certainly have an appreciation for the fact that you can have 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people on a campus at a community event on a nice fall Saturday afternoon.
I'm glad you say that, because behind the scenes there are a lot of sports minds that think that they ought to fold that sucker up, and some guys at your paper who think they ought to fold that sucker up.
Hey, we can all have differing opinions.
No doubt. So moving to the basketball program, something that you beat right, certainly, and do such a great job with. And of course, full disclosure, I am the public address announcer at URI Basketball. But there's a lot of excitement this year for URI, Providence College. The whole 4 institutions are really, really an exciting conversation.
Well, you have a legitimate lottery pick in Chris Dunn at Providence. You have a record number of national television games at URI. You know, Providence looking for a 3rd straight tournament bid. URI looking for its first since 1999. Long, long overdue, as we've discussed before. You know, and Brown and Bryant still trying to make traction. Bryant playing at Duke in their season opener, the defending national champion.
It's a big check for Bryant to go down there and get beat up.
That's what Bryant does, though. That's how they raise their money to fund their program. They'll take 3 or 4 bye games a year and make hundreds of thousands of dollars, which funds their program, cost operations, and any enhancements that they want. It's a very different and effective business model.
So URI has this interesting game coming up on November 17th. It's the second home game of the year. Might be the toughest opponent they play in Valparaiso, but it's at 10 o'clock in the morning. What's ESPN doing with this round-the-clock thing that they're doing?
It's a tip-off marathon. It's a hype machine. You know, that's what ESPN does. They are a hype machine when it comes to the programs that they want to promote, whether it be college football or college basketball. I mean, you have college football on Tuesday nights. You know, who plays football on Tuesday night? Somebody who wants to be on national TV. Who plays basketball at 10 a.m.? Someone who wants to be on national TV.
Will the arena get filled? Will the Ryan Center be filled for a 10 a.m. ball game on a Tuesday morning?
I would appeal to President Dooley at URI to maybe grant a temporary stay from classes that morning.
I just had a conversation with my kid. I said, "Do you think your professors?" He said, "No, Dad, we got to go." That's a really interesting conversation. You can't mandate classes are canceled, but you could certainly wink at the professors and say, give them a little break.
I'm not as worried about the students as I am about the fans. You went to college once, I went to college once. We skipped class for far worse reasons than going to a basketball game, I am sure. I'm worried about the fans. I've heard a lot of pushback saying 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Why would we go to that? How many sick days do you have a year? How many personal days do you have a year? How many half days do you have a year? Take one on that day. It's 1 out of 365.
So are you going to be columnizing on this one, encouraging and kind of having a dialogue with the fans about that?
We're certainly going to be promoting it, and if the fans don't show up, we're certainly going to be scrutinizing them.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Covered a lot of bases.
Thank you.
Bill Koch. We'll be right back. That was good. So this Ice Bucket Challenge has been a great success for a great cause for ALS. The governor, the Speaker of the House, look at the Speaker, all gym closed up, and the Senate President, all 3 of them. But it looks like the governor cheated. Oh, come on, Gov. It was 97 degrees yesterday. Woo! I can't believe it was so cold. What did she have, like a third of the bucket full? Come on, Governor, step up your game, will you please? All right, I'll see you tomorrow on the radio at noon on WPRO. Good night.